Chapter 301 The Indian Maidservant and the Old Saudi Man, Part 11. Rayhana's life was turned into a nightmare after her arrest. She was worried about the future of her daughter. She was also worried about what would happen to her mother and children in Bombay if the Sharia court in Jeddah sentenced her to be stoned to death. The police had already told her that she was going to be tried and stoned to death. Even her prison inmates predicted her end. As soon as she arrived at the Jeddah women's jail, Rayhana met a Pakistani girl by the name of Sakina Abu Islam who was arrested under the similar charge of having sexual relations with a man while she was married to another. After 5 days, the Pakistani girl disappeared. When Rayhana asked about Sakina, she was told that she had been stoned to death on a Friday afternoon. As soon as Rayhana heard about Sakina's cruel death, she cried until she lost her voice. Ever since then, she began to have nightmares and wake up in the middle of the night sweating profusely. She always dreamed about the young Pakistani girl. Many times Sakina came to Rayhana while she was asleep and begged her to stop the Saudi police from stoning her to death. Sometimes, she hallucinated during the day and saw the poor young woman standing in her cell begging her for help. The continuous visions and dreams led Rayhana to believe that her cell was haunted by the ghost of this young woman. She begged the guards to transfer her to another cell where she could be with other inmates, but her requests were rejected. Rayhana's double marriage was discovered merely by chance, by an employee of the Ministry of Religious Affairs. That employee happened to be an Indian Muslim. The beautiful face of Rayhana reminded him of his favorite Indian film heroine, Priyanka Chopra. Priyanka was a Bollywood superstar and former Miss World. Before he came to Saudi Arabia, he used to watch every movie made by Priyanka. He almost worshipped the very ground she walked on. However, after he came to Saudi Arabia he could not see her movies anymore because there was not a single movie theatre in that 7th century country. So, when he saw the first marriage certificate of Rayhana Khan, her photo stuck in his mind. Every day he sneaked a glance at her file and stared at this gorgeous beauty. When Rayhana got married the second time and her marriage certificate reached the Ministry of Religious Affairs, he was shocked when he saw the same face and the same name of the newly married Indian girl. He checked the previous file and found everything to be the same except the names and photos of the two bridegrooms. He showed his discovery to other employees. Everyone confirmed his discovery that the same girl had married 2 different men, in less than 2 weeks. The first thing the employees of the ministry did was to contact the Pakistani Mazoon and inquire if Rayhana had showed him a divorce certificate from the first husband. The Mazoon confirmed that she did not produce any divorce certificate. As a rule, a divorced woman could not get remarried unless she showed proof of her divorce from a previous husband. Moreover, the Quran states that a divorcee has to wait 3 months and 10 days before she marries another man. However, such a requirement was not applicable in the case of the man because the Sharia allows him to marry 4 women. It didn't help her case, either, that when the police raided the house of Sheikh Ahmed, Rayhana was inside her bedroom with her new husband. Her new husband swore he had no knowledge that she had a previous husband or if they had divorced. Even Rayhana condemned herself, when she said that her former marriage and her present marriage were just on paper. She further stated that neither of the 2 men had slept with her. She also admitted that her first pseudo-husband had not divorced her. The policeman, who interrogated her, told her that even a child would not believe such a story. They could not see how it was possible for a young beautiful girl like her to stay with 2 men all alone without either of them having sex with her. Another rule for women accused of adultery is before they appear in court they are required to take a mandatory pregnancy test. So after her interrogation, Rayhana was sent for a pregnancy test. The result of the test came back positive. This was the final nail in her coffin that sealed her fate and added to her list of infringements. It appeared that she was 6 weeks pregnant. The first question the police asked her whether she had a 3rd husband. She condemned herself again when she confessed that her Indian husband died 2 years before. When the police interrogated her about who impregnated her, she said she had been raped by 2 Saudi policemen on the day of her arrival in Jeddah. The policeman wasn't about to buy that story either, they assumed and then concluded that she was a professional prostitute who made her way around the city on a sleeping spree under the cover of marriage. Rayhana appeared before the Sharia court in Jeddah after about a month from the day she was arrested. Looking at all the evidence against her, the judge delivered her over to the jailer to be stoned to death. However, the sentence would be postponed until after she delivered her child and nursed it for 2 years. So she received a double punishment. While it was a temporary reprieve, for her it meant a 3-year jail sentence and then to be stoned to death. Imagine a woman being told that she was going to be killed after serving 3 years in jail. How is any woman in such a situation to sleep at night? That was the mental condition of Rayhana after she heard her sentence. During the day, she was thinking about her death, and every night, she dreamed she was being stoned. In addition to that, her conscience was torturing her endlessly about the fate of her daughter in Jeddah and the future of her children and mother in Bombay. She cried day and night. Whenever she thought about her daughter, she blamed herself for taking her from her home in India and bringing her to this rich Arab country, lured by the promise of money. She regretted she had ever come to this accursed land of the Arabs. Nothing of what she had heard about the holy land of Allah and the land of petrodollars came to be. From day one, she and her daughter had seen nothing but torture and abuse. She was brutally raped in front of her little girl and she was reduced to being an indentured slave, by the evil Cobra woman. In her country, she had experienced none of these evils. Rayhana wished that she could go back in time and turn around from entering inside that wretched plane, which took her and her daughter from their free and safe country and brought them to the land of the great Satan. She remembered that her abuse began inside that damn plane of the Arabs, when she was accused falsely of being a female suicide bomber. She was humiliated and stripped naked by an evil Arab man. If a human being could exhaust all the tears that could be shed, Rayhana would not have been left with one tear to cry. Rayhana was worried that the evil sons of her sponsor might rape her daughter, in her absence. She was also scared that the evil Cobra woman of her sponsor might force her daughter to do all the work required of a maidservant by this vile snake of a woman. Rayhana thought of every possible evil that might happen to her daughter, except what her wicked sponsor had decided to do to her 7-year-old daughter. He couldn't care less her sponsor did not bother to bring her daughter to see her in prison. As soon as she was safely out of the picture, he began to plan how to abuse and rape her little girl. Of course, his conscience was soothed by the evil example of his prophet Muhammad. Because of his child bride, Aisha, thousands of female children get raped every year in Muslim countries due to the example set by an alleged prophet of God. No Muslim would dare challenge what Muhammad did to a 9-year-old plaything as an act of child abuse or child rape for fear of losing his or her life. Mrs. Ahmed allowed Ifat to stay in her house for 1 week before finally she forced her husband to take her away. She hated her with a passion. Whenever she saw her, she saw the face of her mother. Ifat was not only an exact copy of her mother, but she looked as if her mother had cloned her without a father. She had the same beautiful eyes, same golden color, same hair, and same mole on the middle of her left cheek. If Ifat stood among 1,000 young Indian women, no one would confuse her with any of them, except her mother. The only difference between her mother and Ifat was their age and the size of their bodies. Her mother was a bit heavier and had a larger backside. Ifat might develop a more voluptuous body over time, much like her mother once she started to develop into a woman. The situation of her resemblance to her mother created a very serious problem for her. Sheikh Ahmed looked at Ifat as a heavy burden. At first, he did not know what to do with her for a certain. She had no address of her own in India. The old Saudi man knew that Ifat used to live with her mother in a slum. He knew that the address on her passport was the address of the Sudanese student, who was awaiting trial in Bombay. She had no father whom he knew of at this point in time. He did not know any of her relatives. Even if he decided to send her back to India, where should he send her and to whom? If he wanted to keep her, how long should he keep her in his house? Which one of his wives would agree to raise up a child that wasn't her own? Moreover, the scandal of her mother would be a stigma, which would follow her wherever she went for the rest of her life or wherever he would take her. At first, Sheikh Ahmed decided to keep Ifat in the house of his first wife, until he could talk to the Indian consulate and convince them to take her away. He thought that the Indian government might find a wealthy Indian family to adopt her. Those thoughts and worries were going on in the mind of Sheikh Ahmed on the day he was transferring the little Ifat from his fourth wife's house to the house of wife number 1. His Pakistani chauffeur was driving him in his Mercedes while Ifat was sitting near him on the back seat. She was playing with her Barbie dolls. When the old man saw the small child so involved playing with her beautiful Barbie dolls, he gazed at how innocent she was. She seemed unfazed by the disappearance of her mother. His wicked wife repeatedly told Ifat in his presence that her mother went to jail because she was a prostitute and a thief, but Ifat did not understand Arabic. He had taken the trouble to tell Ifat through his chauffeur, that her mother had gone to a place far away, and he told her that she might not come back for a long time. He deliberately left out that she would be stoned to death after sentencing by the Sharia court. He figured that little Ifat would come to know about this terrible tragedy once she was older. The lovely dolls lying in Ifat's lap and in her hands reminded Sheikh Ahmed of a story he read about his Prophet Muhammad. He remembered that the beloved wife of the Prophet Muhammad, Aisha bint Abu Bakr, used to play with dolls at the time he married her. Even Aisha admitted that the Prophet married her when she was 6 years old and she still played with dolls. Before we see where Sheikh Ahmed's mind was going to take him with this idea, we should confirm his claim that his Prophet married a female child of 6 years old who used to play with dolls at the time of their marriage. Narrated Aisha, I used to play with the dolls in the presence of the Prophet, and my girlfriends also used to play with me. When Allah's apostle used to enter, they used to hide themselves, but the Prophet would call them to join and play with me. Sahih al-Bukhari Volume 8, Book 73, Hadith number 151. This hadith is explained in Fateh al-Bari. The playing with the dolls and similar images is forbidden, but it was allowed for Aisha at that time, as she was a little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty. Fateh al-Bari, page 143, Volume 13. The Prophet wrote the marriage contract with Aisha while she was 6 years old and consummated his marriage with her while she was 9 years old, and she remained with him for 9 years, till his death. Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 62, Hadith number 89. Aisha, Allah be pleased with her, reported, Allah's apostle, may peace be upon him, married me when I was 6 years old, and I was admitted to his house when I was 9 years old. Sahih Muslim Book 8, Hadith number 3310. Aisha, Allah be pleased with her, reported that Allah's apostle, may peace be upon him, married her when she was 7 years old, and she was taken to his house as a bride when she was 9, and her dolls were with her, and when he, the Holy Prophet, died she was 18 years old. Sahih Muslim Book 8, Hadith number 3311. Notice that Sahih Muslim mentioned in one hadith that Aisha was a 7-year-old child and in the next hadith she was 6-year-old. Even so, both Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim agreed upon her age, 9 years, when the marriage was consummated, and both mentioned that she used to play with dolls at the time of her marriage. Well, Sheikh Ahmed was right, and his memory was vivid with regards to the age and the childish behavior of the beloved child bride of his Prophet. The Prophet Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 years old and began to have sex with her when she was 9 years old and while she was still playing with her dolls. The dolls of Ifat and the dolls of Aisha suddenly solved the problem of Sheikh Ahmed. At this junction, a devilish idea leaped into his evil mind, and he decided to carry it out in real life. He asked himself, why should I not follow the example of my gracious Prophet and marry the little Ifat? Ifat was 7 years and 11 months old when Sheikh Ahmed decided to marry her. He knew that legally he would not be able to marry her for two reasons. First of all, he already had 4 wives and the Sharia would not allow him to marry a 5th wife unless one of his wives died or divorced her. Secondly, the Saudi law would not allow him to marry a foreigner. Nevertheless, his scheming mind quickly found a way around that particular obstacle. He would divorce one of his 4 wives and, in so doing, his Sharia law would allow him to marry a new wife. The Islamic law places the right to divorce entirely in the hands of the man and does not require him to give any reason for divorcing his wife. He can just say I divorce you and the divorce will take place. No mazun, no Sharia court, no witnesses and no divorce certificate are required. Moreover, the man is not like the divorced woman that he needs to wait for 3 months and 10 days before remarrying another woman. He can divorce one wife today and marry another one tomorrow. Al-Hasan, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, used to divorce 4 wives in one go and marry another set of 4 women in the same day. He was a marriage addict. He married 200 wives plus his uncountable number of right-hand possess or female slaves. The Prophet Muhammad praised him for his ability to marry such unbelievable number of women. Regarding the Saudi restriction around foreign brides, Sheikh Ahmed knew that it was just a man-made law. Sharia law never forbade marriage to a foreign woman or child. He had already married a Christian girl in India, who wasn't a Saudi, and consummated his marriage with her. Regarding which wife he should divorce, 2 immediately popped up into his mind. He should either divorce the one he had just taken Ifat away from, or the one he was taking Ifat to. The 4th wife was ugly, skinny, always complaining and hard to please. The 3rd wife was obese, ugly, and evil like him. The 2nd was old and decrepit. His 1st wife was old and dying of cancer. Twirling the idea in his head, Sheikh Ahmed dismissed the idea of divorcing Mastura for fear of losing her father's favor. He then, understandably, decided to divorce Khadija, wife number 1, so that he could upgrade. After coming to that conclusion, Sheikh Ahmed began to justify this decision in his head. He thought that Rayhana Khan had just used him to come to Saudi Arabia to be with her Indian lover. He reasoned that she lied about being raped and rescued by a Bedouin family. She might have just allowed the 2 policemen to have sex with her and then she asked them to drop her off at her Indian lover's apartment. If he wasn't her lover, why did she agree to marry him? When he convinced her to marry his chauffeur, why did she not mention that she had already gotten married to another man? Why didn't her first husband phone him or come to demand his wife back? What husband would keep quiet and do nothing if another man came and took away his wife from a beauty salon? Therefore, Sheikh Ahmed concluded that Rayhana was either truly a professional prostitute or a big cheat, who used him to come to Saudi Arabia to be with her Indian boyfriend. Satisfied with his logic, he now felt justified in forsaking the love he felt for her and leaving her to face her demise. This justification left him free to marry her daughter. In the back of his mind, Sheikh Ahmed remembered that he had already been cheated by 2 Indian women, Christy and Rayhana. There would not be a third. His mind was now made up about marrying Ifat, but a few obstacles still stood in the way. How could he marry her and where should he keep her? He knew Sharia law would allow him to marry a 7-year-old girl, but Saudi law forbade marrying foreigners. Even if he married her secretly, where would he keep her? At first, the old Saudi thought of marrying Ifat and keeping her in another Muslim country. But, which country should he choose? A number of Muslim countries popped up immediately in his mind: Somalia, Sudan, Eritrea, Djibouti, Gambia, Comoros, Niger, Egypt, Libya, Algeria, Morocco, Mauritania, Yemen, Jordan, Syria, Palestine, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Burkina Faso. In fact, there are 55 Muslim countries, but these are the only ones that popped into his mind. All of these countries are Muslim countries and allowed child marriages. He decided to write the name of each country on a piece of paper and fold it up and then ask if it to pick a piece of paper and whatever she drew from the lot would be her country. On second thought, he dismissed that idea. If he sent his soon-to-be child bride out of the country, he was afraid that when she grew up she might find a boyfriend and run away with him. He recollected the mistake he had made by marrying Christie, only to have her cheat on him with her boyfriend in his house with her Indian boyfriend. She then abruptly dumped him for the infidel dog, Bobby. Before he could come to a conclusion, the car reached the house of wife number 1.